In the American Midwest, there are also many large mounds, which are said to be graves. An author who has sold over 15 million books and written extensively on giants is Brad Steiger.
Mass graves of giants were opened. Some of the men 8 feet tall, some of the women 7 feet tall, some records of men 10 feet tall, and extremely large skulls. And extraordinarily, some of these skulls had horns, some had extra rows of teeth, some had other what we would call anomalies, but they were extraordinarily large skulls and extraordinarily large people.
A maverick archaeologist who has long been fascinated by legends of American giants is David Hatcher Childress.
A number of mounds in the Midwest in America were excavated starting in around 1850. And in many cases, they would find skeletons of people who were in excess of 7 feet tall. And in many cases, they had double rows of teeth, as well as, in some cases, 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot.
The one that was found in Bridal Veil Falls, California by a group of miners, first they found this wall with very intricate hieroglyphics. They assumed that they were finding gold behind the wall. They broke it down and they found this woman holding a child covered with fur and a strange kind of dust. The same tall female mummified remains have been found in Texas. They have been found in Death Valley. They have been found in other parts of California.
These old photographs and newspaper clippings are all that survive of these mysterious giants. Winner of the Newsmaker of the Year award, journalist Jim Mars has a special interest in speculative science.
Archaeology at that time was in a heyday. There was everybody that had a shovel was out trying to find something. But what's interesting is that the finding of these giant mummified bodies and giant fossils and bones, really you can't pin to any particular location. They were finding them in Greece, they were finding them in Italy, they were finding them in the Middle East, they were finding them in America. And even if you write off a few of those as perhaps a hoax or a misinterpretation of something else, you're still left with a tremendous amount of evidence to show that there were these giant beings at some point walking the earth.
In 1912, ranchers started coming to this isolated cave near Lovelock, Nevada, to dig out bat guano for fertilizer. Inside, a surprise was waiting for them.
They began excavating the 10 to 15 feet of guano that was here in this cave. They started discovering some unusual artifacts. They found duck decoys and baskets, other things for hunting and fishing in the nearby lake that's now drying up. But then they made some very unusual discoveries, and those were of red-haired giants that were mummified. These giants were 6.5 to 7 feet tall. In many cases, they were mummified, wrapped up like Egyptian mummies, and they had long red hair going down to their shoulders. The ranchers couldn't explain it. It was the strangest thing they'd ever seen. But the Paiute Indians who lived around here knew all about it. In fact, back in 1883, Sarah Winnemucca, a Paiute Indian princess, had written a book called Life Among the Paiutes. In that book, she talked all about the giant, red-haired people who used to live around this lake and live in this cave. She claimed they were cannibals.
That tribe would eat the dead. They would make war on my people. My people went to work and gathered wood to fill up the mouth of the cave. At last my people set it on fire and called out to them, "Give up or you will die." But no answer came.
Now, one of the great mysteries of the West is what happened to these giants. There was nearly 60 skeletons brought out of this cave. But today, they're nowhere to be found. Is it that there is some kind of archaeological cover-up that has occurred here? Something that concerns giants?
Perhaps the entire story may be a rural legend, or like tons of buffalo bones, the remains may have been burned and used with the bat guano as fertilizer. Whatever the explanation, proof that there were giants here has disappeared. Yet at the same time, tantalizing clues to their existence can be found all over the world.
So I started to investigate just the North American accounts of the giant skeletons that were found in the Ohio and Pennsylvania Valley. I'm talking everything from 10 to 12 foot tall guys found in copper armor. And the more I investigated, I found out it was a worldwide situation where we're talking some really big skeletons, all the way up to 36 feet tall.
If we only had basketball then, huh?
Well, I can tell you this, when some of these guys, some of the British giants, for instance, one guy specifically, listen to this, a guy by the name of William Joyce in the late 1800s, he could lift a ton dead weight, in other words, 2,000 pounds. And that you're only talking about a guy that was 8 feet tall. So I think the situation that most people find in history is there are too many question marks. And when you're looking at the temples of the world, and you're looking at all of the, what would you say, the answers that are out there, but seemingly are, swept under the rug, I think it becomes apparent that for some reason, someone doesn't want the issue of giants brought up, and that's why I spent 3 decades dealing with it. And as you know, the book has got on the front cover a British explorer with 2 12-foot giants from Kashmir standing over him. Now, again, this was in the late 1890s, and as early as 1970, in the jungles of the Amazon, there have been actual reports of people running into very shy natives who are in excess of 9 feet tall.
How tall do you think the little guy is in the middle on your cover of your book, Genesis 6?
According to they claim he's right at 6 feet. When I got that from a group of people in London that have the only photos of these guys around. Also in the book, I have a picture of a 12'2" Irish mummy. And it's fascinating because, later in the show we can get into the mummy issue, but the point that's fascinating is if you take guys that are all the way up to 36 feet tall, 20 feet tall, the Emperor of China had 2 15-foot guards. Charlemagne himself was surrounded by rather large individuals. We have a Roman emperor named Maximinius who was a giant himself. His wife's bracelet, George, would fit around his thumb. We're talking about people that are, we're talking about people with big egos, big appetites, and incredible strength. We're not talking about the medical situation that you see sometimes on the History Channel where they show giants as being these guys that don't live very long, obviously like Andre the Giant, who was a wrestler. Right. We're talking about guys with unbelievable strength, unbelievable knowledge, and unbelievable wisdom. On the website, I even show some of the Incan kings, I-N-C-A-N, Inca, from the Inca Empire, basically in the museums of Peru, that have 4 to 5 times the cranial mass of a standard human skull. So we're not only talking about big guys, we're talking about people with incredible intelligence, and we're talking about an answer that obviously classical anthropology and archaeology, these guys don't want to deal with this. I think it was David Hatcher Childress that coined the word Smithsonian Gate. In other words, a cover-up of history that's rather pronounced. And when you begin to dig, as I began digging over 30 years ago, you can find out that the reports of newspapers in America, of newspapers around the world. Interestingly enough, after I did the last show with Art, somebody went on the website and they sent me from Eastern Europe, they've already sponsored I guess you'd say an undertaking to go into some of the caves where they found a whole, basically, cavern of giant skeletons. And in the New Ancient American, which is a magazine that's put out in America, they found the most contemporary find. It's someplace in desert Southwest, and it actually shows the pictures of the giants, shows the cave, etc. So basically, interestingly enough, too, is that when you look at this, you see that there is a very, very, how should I say, skittish archaeological base out there that doesn't even want to deal with this.
Well, do you think, Stephen, that these giants were regular offsprings of people, or that they popped up in a very unusual way depending on the percent of population at the time?
Well, first of all, I believe that the reason I use Genesis 6, let me read this and I'll comment.
All right.
Genesis 6, 1, 2, and 6 are kind of interesting because it gets into the whole alien, the whole Nephilim, the whole Zechariah, Sitchin, Anunnaki. But let me read it. It says this: "And it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw that the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives, all of which they chose. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bore children unto them, the same became the mighty men which are of old, men of renown." Now, there are two opposing viewpoints on this. During about the 4th century AD, the Catholic Church basically said, well, no, these were the sons of Seth, and the sons of Seth married the daughters of Cain, and out of good men marrying bad women came giants. We're talking about men, George, that had 6 fingers, 6 toes, and double sets of teeth. Now, that's kind of interesting because all through the digs in North America, especially in Catalina in California, Lompoc, where there's a prison in California, they found red-haired giants, 10 to 12 feet tall, double sets of teeth, 6 fingers, 6 toes. You go to South America, and the Mayan god Shambhalum had 6 fingers, 6 toes. And so I believe there is a supernatural element, and then you've got writers who claim that we were created by the aliens, the Anunnaki, and I obviously I don't believe that. I believe that all the myths of history center around this one thing, that basically supernatural beings had sex with earth women and produced giants. And it's in the Bible, it's in Genesis 6, Jude 6, 2 Peter, but more than that, and in addition to that, it's all through history.
So you believe that these giants are the offspring of
fallen angels.
Fallen angels from way gone back.
Well, from way gone back. And
wow.
It gets into the interesting thing. You know, if we go into, let's say, Greek mythology, we've got satyrs, and satyrs was a goat-like body, a human torso, and ram's horns.
Yes.
We've got centaurs, head and torso of a man, lower half of a horse. Cyclops, giants with one eye in the center of the forehead. And by the way, 2 months ago in Indonesia, there were actual cyclopean skulls found, one eye, giant, and immediately the standard, if you will, anthropological community came out and said, oh, these are just basically calcified remains of a normal skull. We've got tritons, mermaids, minotaurs, chimeras or chimeras, and it's interesting because there's actually a patent now with the U.S. Patent Office that combines human DNA and animal DNA. So when we've got a supernatural element inserted into the equation of, in essence, fallen angels even having sex with animals, and by the way, this is ancient Sumerian text, it's ancient Babylonian text. This is something that is through history. It begins to explain a lot of where the myths came from.
Book of the Giants, the Genesis Apocryphon, if you look at the Aramaic Targumim, all of these are saying that very thing, that it was angels, fallen angels, that came down and took women, and they created this hybrid race. So Satan was trying to destroy the seed, but God, of course, preserved the seed so that when Mary came on the scene, then the Holy Spirit overshadowed her and placed the other half of the needed seed in there, so that it was through Mary's seed, through her gamete, her 23 chromosomes, and the combination of the Holy Spirit giving 23 chromosomes, which would then produce the zygote into which the Lord Jesus was incarnated into.
The most frequently asked questions I receive about the Bible is, what about when Joshua and the nation of Israel entered the land of Canaan? They were instructed to wipe out every man, woman, and child of certain tribes. I've talked to some people whose entire rejection of the Bible and God rests on this portion of the biblical text. This video is for those people. What no one ever mentions when recounting this issue is that according to the story itself, the tribes that they killed were non-human hybrids called the Nephilim, and they were huge. They had iron beds 13 feet long and 6 feet wide. It says that the Israelites were like grasshoppers in the sight of the Canaanites. These Nephilim were the offspring of very evil spiritual beings, and they were apparently the primary reason God sent the flood. Satan knew of the prophecies of one that would come to defeat him, and before any of the prophets came to expand on how this was to occur, all he knew at that point was that the Messiah would be a human. The Nephilim were an attempt to infiltrate the entire bloodline of humanity so that the Messiah could not be a full-blooded man, and if it weren't for Noah and his family, it would have worked. Then when Abraham found out from God that the land of Canaan was to be given to Abraham, Satan also found out, and he had over 400 years to plant this minefield of Nephilim in the land of Canaan in an attempt to thwart the plan of God. Genesis 6:4 tells us that the Nephilim were also on the earth after the flood, and it is them who Joshua was told to wipe out. Tribes such as the Rephaim, the Emim, the Horim, the Zamzumim were all giants. The kingdom of Og was the land of the giants. Later we also find Arba and Anak and his 7 sons, the Anakim, also giants, along with the famed Goliath and his 4 brothers. Now if you want to say, well, God should have let the 13-foot tall evil hybrids bent on the destruction of humanity for the purpose of wiping out any chance for the redemption of man go, then you're free to think what you want. But please remember, this is according to the biblical narrative itself, which is where the accusations come from in the first place. The point is that if you're going to claim that you know that God is a tyrant because of this portion of the Bible, and you didn't know the rest of the story, just think about how many other issues there are in regard to the Bible where you might have misplaced animosity. It may be that you just are in need of further study.
Hello, Laverne here. Thank you for joining me in what is the 10th video in this series dealing with the writings of Enoch. In this video, I'm going to be talking about evil spirits, what they are, where they come from, and the importance of understanding them. I'm also going to try and dispel one of the arguments that atheists love to come up with in stating that God is an evil God for something that he does in the Old Testament. Now, where do evil spirits come from? Well, if you read the Bible, the 66 books, the Protestant Bible, you really don't get a clear answer. There is nothing that explains where these evil spirits come from. Most people simply chalk it up to Satan. But Enoch explains exactly where evil spirits come from. And it's not from the fallen angels. Enoch explains that evil spirits actually come and are giants who are the offspring that resulted from the union of fallen angel and women. You see, these fallen angels, who were called watchers, lusted after women and ended up having relationships with them. And the offspring were 3 different races of giants. Now God explains that their spirit or their soul is different from that of man's. Man was created with a dual nature, that of the carnal and that of spirit from God. These giants, while they had the same nature as the woman, they had a different spirit in them that came about from the angels. The spirit of the angel was intertwined with the spirit of man. And God explains that their spirit, when they die, does not sleep like man's does. It does not go to heaven or hell. It's not simply asleep, but rather is left to roam the earth. And Enoch explains that the spirit is kind of like a cloud, which is, kind of like people explain apparitions and ghosts. So these giants, when they die, their spirit is left to roam, and they're known as evil spirits. And Enoch tells us that they can take many forms. So they can possess not only humans, but also animals. We don't see this or hear this anywhere else in the Bible. We have no explanation of what evil spirits are except from Enoch. And what he tells us is they are actually giants who have passed away, that their evil spirit continues to roam. And not only does their evil spirit roam, but it's able to possess both man and animal. Now, in the New Testament, we actually see this happening. Jesus, when he comes up against a man in the graveyard, this man was possessed. And when Jesus asked the evil spirit what his name was, they replied, Legion, because there were so many of them. And then when Jesus cast them out, they asked if they could go into this swine herd, or this herd of swine. And Jesus allowed it. And then we see these spirits leaving the man and going into this herd of pigs. And they ended up running the pigs off this cliff, killing them all. So we actually see it happening, where these evil spirits took possession of a man and then took possession of an animal. And this lines up perfectly with what Enoch teaches us about evil spirits. Now, the other thing to keep in mind that I want to talk about is Enoch also tells us that these giants were cannibals. He tells us that after consuming all the food that humans had, and when that food ran out, they started consuming humans. So we know that these giants were cannibals. Now, I talked about in my last video how there was a man who made a vow to God that if he was allowed to win a great victory, when he got home, he would sacrifice whatsoever was the first thing to come out of his home. Well, the first thing happened to be his daughter, and so he sacrificed his daughter. And atheists love to point at this and say, what an evil God we serve that would force a man to make this sacrifice. But as I pointed out in the last video, this was not of God. Because Enoch explains that we are not to make vows, or we are not to make a vow to God. We are simply to let our yes be yes and our no be no. So if Christians understood the writings of Enoch, they would be able to refute this kind of argument coming from atheists. And in the same way, atheists love to point out how evil God is because he demands the Israelites to destroy certain cities, and in doing so, to kill every person in that city, including babies, innocent babies. But you see, if we understood, the Christians understood the writings of Enoch, we would understand that the giants that were living in these cities were the offspring of the giants back in the day of early man, pre-flood. And these were the descendants, the same giants who were cannibals. They were exceedingly evil. And so when God tells the Israelites to wipe them out, he's telling them to wipe out this evil race of giant that are cannibalistic, but even more so, when these giants die, their spirits roam the earth and they become evil spirits that possess men and women and animal alike. So God commands the Israelites to completely wipe out these people. And that means killing the babies as well, because even as a baby, when that baby giant dies, his spirit continues to roam. So God, by wiping out this race of giants, he is ending the number of evil spirits that will roam the earth. This is so important to understand. Atheists don't understand. And not only do atheists not understand, Christians don't understand what God was doing and why he did it. We need to understand that the Canaanites were a race of giants. When Moses sent the 12 scouts into the promised land, they came back and said, it's beautiful, flowing of milk and honey, but we can't take it. We've got all these giants there. We have no hope whatsoever of defeating them. And what these giants were, they were descendants of the giants who came about from the union of angel and woman. So when God wipes them out, he's not only wiping out an evil race who are cannibals, but he's also limiting the number of evil spirits that will wander the earth. And this is so important to understand.
Most people by default ignore the idea of demons in our world. But if you have an encounter yourself, your life will change. Many people attribute their encounters as ghosts, paranormal activity, and UFOs. I hear people refer to a spirit as a dead relative watching over them. But most encounters have an evil nature. The majority of reports are based on emotions and misunderstandings. This is a contributing factor to disbelief. The truth is, the majority of people will not have an encounter strong enough to force the realization. This is something we should be thankful for. How could we possibly live day to day with the knowledge of something so horrible? When you encounter evil face to face, there is no escaping it. Anyone who has will tell you their life has changed forever. My own confrontation is directly responsible for my belief in God.
And there's a contest between Satan and God for the souls of men.
Their daily combat is the story that animates people's lives for centuries.
The idea of one God is responsible for rewards and blessings. Sorrows and joys becomes very difficult. Perhaps God is not the singular God who causes all of the evil in the world. Perhaps there is another force at work.
The Apocrypha and early Jewish writings have much to say about demons. I believe many of these writings have a core of truth, but it requires a certain amount of discernment. The Testament of Solomon is a very intriguing book. He is given a ring from God which grants him power over all demons. He then calls forth the leading demons to identify them. Jesus refers to these accounts and the power Solomon had over them. Sometime near the year 30 AD, a crowd gathers in a small village around the Lake Gennesaret. Here the residents of this Roman province called Judea witness a miracle. In the process of healing a man, Jesus is accused of having a demon. In his rebuke, he refers to the Testament of Solomon and says he has a greater power. This very statement gives legitimacy to the Testament of Solomon. At least we know there is a core of truth here.
He says this in the middle of an exorcism of demons. He says, "For behold, someone greater than Solomon is here." Why doesn't he say greater than King David? No, greater than Solomon. Jesus is making an oblique reference to a story that was already well known in ancient Judea and which apparently people accepted as truth.
The theme of demons in the Bible is very real. If you're not aware, then you are vulnerable. The amount of demons in this world is limited. The book of Baruch says there were 409,000, but there's no way to really know. The book of Jubilees says 10% of the demons were allowed to carry on with mankind. This means their actions are limited. The nature of demons is similar to the nature of people. Demons can be meek and they are vicious, and every combination in between. The Jewish Midrash explains some of their qualities.
Noah took demons into the ark and thus preserved their species. A demon named Og went with Noah to plant the vineyard and made a condition with him not to interfere in any way with his work or he would injure him. Demons are also known as the hairy ones, as the prophet describes in Isaiah chapter 13. The word means demoniac agency as well as flames. And when we are told that Pharaoh's magicians imitated Moses' performance of miracles, it means that they did this through the agency of demons. With the approaching dawn of day, the power of demons diminishes, their power being for the most part confined to night only. Religious men may gain power over demons and subdue them in various ways, as did King Solomon before his fall. Demons are always ready to injure man, but a sort of mask or thick veil is put before their faces, which tends to dim their sight so that they cannot look clearly at man. When, however, man sins, the image of God on him is reduced or eliminated, and this has the effect of lessening the dimness of the demon's sight so that he then has the power of injuring man by merely looking at him. Man is above everything. Even over demons he can have dominion. But when he falls by sin, demons may take advantage over him. Tales from the Jewish Midrash.
It is difficult to believe all of what the Midrash declares, but I do believe there are elements of truth within it. One intriguing description calls demons the hairy ones. As a matter of fact, the Midrash states one of the names of demons is hairy ones. The hairy demons have their own classification called Serum. The powerful and vicious demon called Azael is one of these demons. Could this be a reference to Bigfoot? There are many references from other cultures about hairy demons, such as Enkidu from the Gilgamesh epic, Yeti, Sasquatch, the Chinese Wild Man, the Forest Man of Vietnam, and the Danish Grendel. A Persian demon called Ashma was a small hairy demon able to cause men to commit acts of cruelty. Every major culture around the world has legends of these creatures. They are described as tall, and according to our own American Indian legends, evil. This could also provide an answer to why Bigfoot has been so evasive and why it shies away from man, seeming to vanish in thin air. Demons live in a parallel dimension, and the Midrash says their view of us is veiled. But man does have an authority over them. But they have an ability to appear and disappear from our reality, just like UFOs. Whether Bigfoot is actually one of the Serum demons is pure speculation, but a very tantalizing one. The New Testament leaves no doubt that those who believe in Christ have power over demons. But for those who don't believe, you are at their mercy, and most demons have no mercy at all. We should remember the majority of reports attributed to demons are based on misunderstanding, emotions, and commercial hype. Discernment is required. Why are UFOs, ghosts, and paranormal activity, and even Bigfoot so similar? They all have circumstantial evidence without any hard scientific proof. They seem to vanish in thin air. Numerous reports can be dismissed, but yet certain cases can't. Some reports have a legitimate basis with credible witnesses. If these events are not going on, then what is? Is it just coincidence that all of these types of reports have the same circumstantial conditions? Or is there a common basis? I believe they are related, and the entities responsible live in a dimension not visible to us. A dimension designed by God to prevent them from damaging our world like they did in the days of Noah. Enoch called them evil spirits, and they became known as demons. They still have great knowledge and power to influence us. They are telepathic and can present themselves as aliens from another planet, a dead relative, or some form of ghost. They can cause objects to move and rooms to chill, and are responsible for a host of other phenomena. The demons are subjected to man, but more so in regards of Christ. Another tale from the Midrash says some demons are afraid of other demons, and we can see a vast difference within their own kind. This offers an explanation for the diversity of hauntings and paranormal activity reported. The Midrash and the Testament of Solomon tell of some demons even helping man. Solomon used them for good when he had control over them. It is only by Christ that we have any control over them now. By a belief in Christ, the Son of God, you can order demons away, even the most fierce. The haunted houses and ghost stories you hear about are deceptive. Demons have a telepathic ability. They will appear as a dead relative if it gives them access. People who believe this, or believe it is a helping spirit, are being deceived. They are entertaining demons. As we have discussed, some demons are meek, but make no mistake, they are demons. The Apostle Paul says, "It is appointed once for man to die and then judgment." In Luke chapter 16, verse 26, Jesus says there is an unpassable chasm between our world and those who have died. Man is not capable of coming back as a spirit.
No one knows what hypnosis is. No one knows what goes on in the mind. It's an altered state of consciousness like yogis and witch doctors have been practicing. It loosens the normal connection between your spirit and your brain, and of course if the hypnotist can control you, make all kinds of suggestions, make you think things are happening that are not happening, make you think you have powers that you don't, experiences that you haven't, even implant memories, other beings, if there are other minds out there, they could also do the same thing. Sir John Eccles, Nobel Prize winner for his research on the brain, describes the brain as, quote, a machine that a ghost can operate, unquote. What he means by that is your spirit operates your brain in a normal state of consciousness. In an altered state, reached under yoga, TM, hypnosis, you have loosened the normal connection between your spirit and your brain, and that allows another spirit, other entities, other minds to interpose themselves and begin to tick off the neurons in your brain, create a universe of illusion. I believe that it's demonic. I think all of the evidence indicates this.
The modern reports of UFOs, alien grays, abductions, ghosts and spirits, and paranormal activity are all related to these demons of renown, the Nephilim. Because they are telepathic, they present themselves in different forms. They have access to your mind and anyone within your memory. Remember, Satan himself can appear as an angel of light, deceiving even the elect. Those who claim to have psychic abilities are opening their minds to demons. TV shows like Ghost Hunters, Paranormal State, and Psychic Investigators are playing with fire. Psychic investigators claim these psychics communicate with dead victims and help the police catch the killer. Other shows attribute these spirits as some disgruntled person who died violently. This is a perfect example of how some demons will present themselves, appearing as a dead victim to help solve a crime, or a relative pretending to give some type of guidance. They are desperate for human interaction. There are different types of demons. Some desire to help man, as described in the Midrash. Do not be deceived. I believe the form of the alien grays is their true form. Being stripped of their apparel, they go naked, and they have horrible faces. This sounds very much like the condition in which they were condemned by God. They are in the process of their last scheme, appearing to be friendly and willing to help mankind. Some scholars believe they will deceive the world against the return of Christ, painting him as an invading alien.
Some of the passages that puzzle me the most in the scripture, it describes that the whole world is going to go to war against God. Now, I can understand the world rejecting God, I can understand the world not believing God, but somehow it's always been hard for me to visualize the world mustering its resources to go to war against God. And yet that's clearly what it says in Psalm 2 and a number of other places. But you know, suddenly I can begin to understand how this might happen, because there are many people that believe that there are already aliens among us conspiring with the government, whatever, and they visualize these as being the good guys. They're here to help us. They're here to give us advanced technology. They're people that really have this kind of attitude. I can begin to see a scenario which we sometimes call good cop, bad cop kind of thing, where Satan's emissaries pose to be our friends to help prepare us for the bad guys who are coming. And I can visualize the whole world being deceived and taking up arms against God, thinking that they're being led by their friends who are actually Satan's emissaries.
They have been stripped of their apparel. They go naked, and they have horrible faces.
This is a quote from an early Jewish writing called the Book of the Cave of Treasures. It tells of fallen angels and their bastard children called the Nephilim. God destroyed the Nephilim's bodies and doomed them to wander the earth in an invisible dimension, and they are still terrifying men. In our modern paradigm, they are known as demon spirits. The word demon is from the Greek language and implies a supernatural knowledge. This demon knowledge is superior to our own knowledge. The Bible tells of their creation in Genesis chapter 6, and they were the cause of the destruction of life on earth. The Apocrypha and early Jewish writings expound on these evil spirits. The Book of Enoch tells of their giant stature and how they manipulated the genetics of man and animals in every imaginable way. In other words, no stone was left unturned in their evil experiments.
The answer to all this and the clue to this cosmic riddle may be found in the ancient book of Genesis. And back there in chapter 6, we are told of a very amazing and bizarre event. The sons of God saw the daughters of men and saw that they were beautiful, and they lusted after them. And then we read they married them and sired children from them. For the past 1500 years, most scholars, including evangelical scholars, have interpreted the sons of God as the good sons of Seth, and the daughters of men as the wicked daughters of Cain. They've adopted that interpretation because the other one is so bizarre and outlandish. The ancient interpretation, and in my opinion the correct one, is that the sons of God were demonic beings or fallen angels, and that they came down to earth, they lusted after the daughters of men, they married them, and produced this amazing progeny, this hybrid progeny of the Nephilim. And the very word Nephilim does not mean giants. It comes from the root Nephal, fallen ones.
Edgar Mitchell, a former Apollo astronaut, went on the record on Kerrang Radio. And after he sort of announced it on Kerrang Radio several years back, I saw him again on the Fox News channel with Sean Hannity on a sit-down one-on-one. And Edgar Mitchell's basically stating, look, Roswell was real. There was a crash and bodies that were recovered from Roswell, and our government covered it up.
Yes, there's not much question at all, but there's life throughout the universe. We're not alone in the universe at all.
You're convinced that we're not alone in the universe?
Oh, I know for sure we're not alone in the universe. And I happen to be privileged enough to have be in on the fact that we have been visited on this planet. And the UFO phenomenon is real, although it's been covered up by our governments for quite a long time. It is a real phenomenon, and there's quite a few of us. It's been well covered up by all of our governments for the last 60 years or so, but slowly it's leaked out, and some of us are privileged to have been briefed on some of it, but I've also been in military circles and intelligence circles that knows beneath the surface of what has been public knowledge, that yes, we have a distance.
He believes that, like I do, that there is a cover-up. We just have a discrepancy in our world's view as to what's behind the phenomena. Again, he's extraterrestrial, I'm interdimensional, and specifically the fallen ones, fallen angels, which we read about back in Genesis 6, once again manifesting on the earth. So there is evidence. There's plenty of evidence. We've got the witnesses.
The popular documentary Ancient Aliens is trying its best to convince people aliens from other planets are responsible for the creation and evolution of mankind. They openly deny the God of the Bible while interpreting Bible passages in the same breath. I believe this is one of the deceptions Jesus alluded to concerning the end times, deceiving even the elect. The ancient alien theorists point to many artifacts and structures and claim these extraterrestrial aliens built them in the ancient past. I believe some of this is true, but these entities are not aliens from another planet. They are demonic spirits from an alternate universe, where they were sentenced by God. They are now disguising themselves as alien greys and are pretending to help man. Their spirit is also behind the transhumanism movement, the altering of human DNA. Most people are not even aware of what is going on behind closed doors. Scientists are actively manipulating the genes of animals and man under the guise of improving humanity.
We are shifting to a transhuman base. We've come out of a humanist time, and now we're redefining what it is to be human.
Whether we like it or not, we're becoming cyborgs. We're becoming transhumans.
We have the opportunity now to try to do things better than nature has done.
Why not have a stronger arm than we have? Why not be able to run faster? Why not be able to have tougher skins?
If you're going to replace your eye for vision, why limit it to visual? Why not give it the kind of vision a bat has? Give it ultrasound.
Could you imagine a Versace body design? Can you imagine a Terry Mugler body design? These individuals, the late Versace was an incredible designer. What if he was a transhuman? What if he was an artist who really wanted to combine art and science? I bet his designs for a future body would be astounding.
So if we can humanize the pig kidney by putting in some human DNA, which will make the cells look a little bit more human, so that they are not rejected by the person immediately, then there's a better chance that you'll have a take. And this is tried to humanize animal tissues, and it's becoming a big industry because we need more organs.
I think increasingly we're going to start realizing that this body is not sacred. The way we are is not some kind of God-given plan. It's really a pure random accident. We take two sets of genes and we shuffle them and something comes out. Sometimes it's a wonderful product, sometimes it has a hole in the heart, sometimes it has psychosis or tendencies towards extreme anger, has addictive problems, can't concentrate, all kinds of defects. To say, oh, that's normal, that's sacred, that's good, to me is rather absurd. It's random. There's not a plan there that we're thwarting. So genetic engineering seems to me one of the most moral things we can do.
Wow, doublespeak at its best. This last man has completely reversed morality, saying transhumanism is the moral thing to do, when in fact it is the exact opposite, and the very thing the fallen angels and the Nephilim did in the days of Noah. All of these people believe in this delusion and are influenced because of their denial of God. The same is true with the ancient alien theorist. God sends a deluding influence so they will believe what is false, because they delight in their own evil will, as explained in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2.
The idea around what we are doing in the genetics right now of humans, animals, plants, all seems to be an all-out assault on God's creative genius that goes back to that Genesis prophecy about the seed of the serpent and the seed of the woman being set at odds one toward each other. And this is why, of course, Pandemonium's engine, why we gathered all of these scholars to address the various aspects of this issue, because in my opinion, nothing could be more prophetic. All of the Bible is all about genetics, the purity of genetics, and a war over genetics. Then it's a Mephistophelian bargain. It's a deal with the devil. It's back to why we named the book Pandemonium's Engine, that deal that was struck in Paradise Lost. Ye shall be as gods is whispered in the ears of humanity. And but where does it take us now? I think we're seeing a repeat of ancient science.
That was his power. The greatest trick the devil ever pulled
was convincing the world he didn't exist.
The Science Channel's TV series, Through the Wormhole, is hosted by the beloved actor Morgan Freeman. In the episode, Can We Eliminate Evil?, Morgan Freeman says Satan doesn't exist. He is just a symbol, implying Christianity is for the weak-minded. Morgan Freeman, like so many others, lives in the delusion of his own will, and by denying the existence of Satan, he denies his creator as well.
The latter days, in part, will be distinguishable because of the rise of powers that have been suppressed or repressed over the years, but in the latter days, those powers will emerge once again. And one of our favorite verses has to do with some of the words of Jesus in Matthew 24, starting in verse 36, but of that day and hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only. But as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. And what he's saying here is the days of Noah will be sort of transplanted into the latter day era. And you and I both believe we're seeing that right now. Absolutely. One of the, in my opinion, we're looking at the return of the Nephilim. It's a different incursion than what happened thousands and thousands of years ago. I call it the coming great deception. And what we're going to see is, or what we are seeing, is this manifestation of orbs and craft and other phenomena, other anomalies. Meanwhile, shows like the History Channel's Ancient Aliens program is promulgating what I call the coming great deception. They're saying that E.T. created all life on this planet, that they genetically manipulated all life on this planet, that they started the world's civilizations and religions, and now are coming back at this critical juncture in human history. Well, Christians in the church better wake up to what is happening, because this phenomena is real, burgeoning, and not going away.
Dr. Jacques Vallée has addressed the United Nations on UFOs and was the model for the Lacombe character in Steven Spielberg's Close Encounters of the Third Kind. He is the author of 8 books about UFOs and has been widely recognized as the premier researcher in ufology. In his book, Messengers of Deception, he says, an impressive comparison can be made between UFO occupants and the popular conception of demons. In his book, Confrontations, he writes, the medical examinations to which abductees are said to be subjected, often accompanied by sadistic sexual manipulation, is reminiscent of the medieval tales of encounters with demons.
Jacques Vallée, at least at that time when he wrote that book, was an agnostic. Interesting that he comes to basically the same conclusions I do as a Christian from my research. And he said about UFOs, they're real, but they're not physical. They're messengers of deception. And this was based on his research of about 20 years. In Close Encounters of the Third Kind, that first film that came out about UFOs, the house that the mother and little boy were living in, the toys began running around and screws unscrewing in the presence of UFOs. What the film was saying was the same people that run UFOs run haunted houses. And I would say that's absolutely true.
John Keel was a world-renowned expert with unidentified flying objects and has written numerous articles and books on the subject. A self-described agnostic, he made this statement: thousands of books have been written on the subject of demonology, which is the ancient and scholarly study of monsters and demons. The manifestations and occurrences described in this literature are identical to the UFO phenomenon. Victims of demonic possession suffer from the same medical and emotional symptoms as the UFO contactees.
They have been stripped of their apparel. They go naked, and they have horrible faces.
It's just that the face is the eyes. They look horrible.
And the eyes, the horrible look, had that information that you just told me?